All right. I would like to call to order the Monday, July 1st meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Holquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Mayor O'Connell.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 6th, May 20th,
I think that was moved to approve.
and June 17th meetings? Was that a motion?
Approval?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any corrections or additions? I think, Aline, it looks like you're just about caught up. Is that
I am caught up.
great news?
It's a Herculean effort on the
Yeah.
part, so.
Any corrections or additions? Hearing and none, all in favor say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. There, you have any?
I have no appearances.
Okay, we have no appearances. We did get 2 emails related to the DIB recommendations, which I know all the council got as well, from Kate Nolan and Sue Carr. I guess, Aline, I don't know if you want to include those in with the minutes next time. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Moving on to unfinished business, item 1A, G1A, consideration of resolution 24-6-2419, amending the city purchasing policy. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay. Neil, did you want to?
Yep,
Address
just
this?
no other additional changes or comments received based on the previous one. Essentially, this would be moving the staff level or department head approval from 2,500 to 7,500, and moving my approval authority from 25,000 to 50,000, with an additional option of it for approved budgeted expenditures between 50 and 100 to be put on the consent agenda in discussion with you, Mayor, as part of our agenda finalization. So.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All
I
in
do.
favor? Patrick?
Quick question.
Okay,
What,
Patrick?
yeah, I just wanted, what's the rationale behind increasing the latitude and the dollar amounts?
Essentially, originally, when discussed, essentially just based on inflation, this number had not been, I think, updated in quite some time. So essentially, just partially from inflationary purposes, and then just also just to kind of match what we see as kind of what a standard set of costs coming forward to this body, just adjusting it to what we feel is essentially an appropriate level for staff. And again, but obviously that's subject to agreement by this body. So.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion passes. Moving on to item G1B, consideration of resolution 24-6-2717, authorization to proceed with further evaluation of a preferred design concept for the Civic Campus Public Safety Building, put forth by the Ad hoc Public Safety Building Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
I think we, as we discussed last week, I don't, Neil, if you have anything more to add, basically the Bray has come up with 2 options for the design on the City Hall site, one of which would involve moving the well and the reservoir, which we know is probably has 5 to 10 years left. So option 1 is moving the well. That would result in a much more cohesive building, which better use of space, and a lot of other things. It's just really considered the optimal choice. Neil, did you have any?
Yeah,
else
just,
to
just
add?
to be clear, the purpose of this motion at this point is to just provide direction to our consulting staff, especially Bray Architects, in terms of finalizing a design and a concept in order to come up with some cost estimates. So this is not approval of a design or even of a building at this point. We're still working on finalizing the space allocation within the project, as well as a couple of other aspects we want to do. We currently have out a request for qualifications for a construction manager who will actually, once on board, will actually help us finalize then specific cost estimates. But just for efficiency's sake, we were looking for direction from council to select one option to allow us to focus on that particular option.
Yeah, they're kind of to the point where it didn't make sense anymore to keep on working on two
Mm-hmm.
different designs. Any questions? Nancy?
So to clarify, since this doesn't spell out, I don't believe, one option, correct?
I think I have to look at the resolution.
Let me see, I believe.
It says, I'm not seeing option A or option number one in the resolution.
Let's see
It just says preferred.
It only says that it would be best to focus on one design.
It does a
But
further
it doesn't
evaluation of the
say
design
which.
concept that includes the relocation of well number 4
Got it.
Okay,
in the now therefore be it resolved section.
okay, got it, thank you.
We felt it was confusing because we're not sure when it was 1, when it was 2. So to actually
Okay.
describe
Got
it
it,
in
yeah.
there, we made
Okay.
sure, so.
Yeah, because I thought that's the direction we all.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Rick, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment. When I look at the design, the one thing that really strikes me, and I know this is a little bit out of the scope of the question we're being asked, but the parking lot is large, and it's really the center of our civic campus. And I'm just wondering, not so much what can we do to build something into it for programming purposes, but not foreclose our options perhaps is the one thing I might strongly suggest, because there are certain needs the library and the senior center have for open space, for programming, for performances, for outdoor activities, and it just seems to me that there's something we can do with that parking lot other than it just being a parking lot. And so I just want to suggest that as planning goes forward, and just kind of stir the creative juices a little bit and see if there's something we can do that really strengthens that as the center of our civic campus. Just a comment.
I'm just
Teresa?
curious, has the overall amount of parking gradually changed or drastically
I
changed?
think it's somewhat more, isn't it?
Essentially, the actually total number of stalls actually has decreased by a couple.
That's-
But keep in mind now, where our current police squads are currently parked, they're taking up a significant number of those spaces.
Okay.
So those will be moved into their own specific area or most likely to be parked inside.
Yeah.
So that actually, as a net, we're actually increasing the
Got
available
it.
parking stalls because of that shifting of the police squads.
I wondered if I had an aerial view of the current, layout, which we don't. But I see what you're saying, Alder Bernstein. It seems like there's a lot of parking there, but I was just curious, maybe it's not compared to what we already
Yeah,
have.
in terms of a net, I think it's certainly something, if I've had conversations, at least at the core team level in terms of staff, is like I said, is there a way to actually get more parking? We know there's certainly when the pool's in high demand, when the senior center's in high demand, we actually could probably use additional parking.
Yeah.
So it's certainly trying to find the right balance. Alder Bernstein, to your point, I think there's probably a way to actually use some of the hard surface area as maybe where you could either block off part of it and use it for programming of some sort, or have that flexibility. So it would kind of be in terms of like designing the outside of the ability to kind of separate off that area to use for other programming. Absolutely something we can certainly take a look at going forward. Absolutely.
One idea I had is that it seems each building has its own set of flags that it puts up. If there was one unified flag for the whole city, it might reduce the amount of time and energy it takes to figure out what flag should be half-mast and which shouldn't. And it might be more ceremonial there than it would be hither and yon.
Yeah, I think there, at least in terms of staff discussions, there's kind of where the triangle where it comes down along Nichols, there's actually, I'll say, perfect spot, or it looks like a great spot where you could actually have those flags be very featured and very prominent as you're driving past the facility on Nichols Road. So we actually have taken a look at that, certainly for this building. Then we certainly weren't thinking about replacing the flags at the other structures at this point, but there's certainly something we can look at.
Another thought for,
Yeah.
food for thought.
And of course, there's always the park available right across the street for any kind of events also, so.
And we're gonna have such good public transportation, we're not gonna need that much parking anyway, so we'll be fine.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
I have a question about, this may just be, when I'm looking down at some of the drawings, let's just take the first one, for example, sort of like that sketch, as opposed to more of a photograph-looking picture, you're looking straight down on it. Nichols Road, does this sketch take into account the redesign of Nichols Road? I guess more specifically, it seems like Nichols Road right by the library is a little wider than it is today, or maybe it's not, and that's just me thinking
Yeah,
it
this is just conceptual at this
Yeah.
point, Alder. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Very-
very
they've certainly not
preliminary.
been engineered, and
Okay.
so they're, obviously the architect is very much aware that the city is looking at doing a realignment of that. And that based on actually the property land survey that we've just gotten completed for that, that will be able to accommodate that
Sure.
and very specifically incorporate that design, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they've always been careful to stress that this is very, very
Yeah.
preliminary. A lot is gonna change, a lot has to be filled in, and that kind of thing, so.
For sure.
Any other questions? Do we need a roll call on this, or can we just,
There's no financial
So-
impact at this point, so.
well, then, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Moving on, why don't we take this a little bit out of order, move on to move up 2B, so Jake can leave. Consideration of Resolution 24-7-2421, award of contract for Winnequa Park Trail expansion, put forth by the Park and Rec Board. Okay, Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, hearing's not good today, so I'm using my AirPods, but now I'm just talking in its ear.
Whatever works.
If you open your email, you'll see the map of the trail expansion project, and that's what's on the agenda for tonight to approve the low bid. Parks Board has seen this numerous times, Alder Dupula and Alder Wood. I'll just walk through the rest of the council really quick if I can. So currently, we have a paved path from Greenway Road going past Winnequa School up around the pool to the skate park. It's a heavily used path daily for walkers and bikes. It's fairly narrow in most spots, 6 feet or less, in very poor condition. So this project was deemed a high priority by the Parks Board upon recommendation from myself, not only to improve that segment of the path, but also to complete a loop in the park and serve as another safe route to school option for our children of the community, a programming path for our senior department, and also to meet some of the goals of our ADA transition plan, which is to create accessible programmed areas. So our youth sports, our soccer, flag football, baseball, softball, we can consolidate to this area of the park and have accessible paths to those programmed areas. So this project removes one of our softball diamonds. So the softball diamond at Winnequa at the end of Greenway is removed. That consolidates to the two softball fields where the shelter and bathrooms are. It goes across the park on the north end and hooks into the Fireman's Park Shelter area and parking lot. A large bike parking area will be where the current swings are at Fireman's, and then those swings will be relocated to near the playground. The playground is not part of this project. It is old, it's still serviceable, and will be at some point included for replacement. This also provides an access point off the drive into Fireman's Park, so you'll be able to ride your bike and get onto the path and either go to one of the programmed areas, down to the pool area. It includes different parking, different outlets along the path. So if you have a loved one in a wheelchair with mobility issues, we can get you right to a spectator viewing area at one of our fields. It creates as much space on the south side, or on the west side, so it'll kind of go into the grove of trees at Winnequa, and has multiple areas for bicycle parking. So we have a large bike parking area at Fireman's, which we currently don't have any bike parking there at that part of the park. There's one by the Schaefer Shelter, so that'll serve for the softball and baseball. And then one actually right outside the tennis/pickleball courts, so there'll be bike parking there to access those courts from the backside. This project was competitively bid, and we had 4 bidders. That was last week. Homburg Contractors was the low bidder. As we all know, we've worked extensively with Homburg in the past on different city projects and park projects. And based upon our review by our consultant, meeting all the criteria for the contract, recommendation was made to accept and approve that low bid. And that was also unanimously recommended at Parks Board.
Any questions? Rick?
So with the field being taken out, are you also taking out the fence and the bleachers?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep, because the path will actually kind of go right through the middle of Greenway Road and then head almost right through the middle of that, where that diamond is.
okay,
There will also be a sidewalk connection up Greenway Road to connect with the existing sidewalk that is at Rothman. So it kind of ends at Rothman on Greenway from the school. This will allow no street, basically walking, biking for kids if they're coming from the Toniawatha Trail, Winnequa area as well.
so I just have one question about that end of the road at Greenway. I'm just curious if like a rain garden might be suitable there, because there's quite a slope at the end of Greenway and a lot of water funnels that way, and it seems with that path, some of that water is gonna sluice through there a little bit.
So we're actually raising about 8 to 10 feet of the end of the road. So
Oh.
it isn't such a,
Oh, you're
'cause
raising
it's kind
the
of right now, if you come down that path, it's like at an angle.
Yeah.
And it's this downhill, weird, like turn in. And so just the very end of that is gonna get raised up, so it's a much more gradual,
Oh,
entrance into the park. And then there's a stormwater, drain right there. That'll get raised up as well a little bit.
oh,
You said 8 feet.
That's
You
a
meant
lot.
eight
Yeah,
inches.
I think 8 feet from the curb,
Oh.
cause that's all
Oh,
gonna be
the
the
length.
curb.
Linear
Yeah.
feet.
Length,
I
not
know.
Oh, not even high.
That's right.
Oh,
Probably
okay.
about 8 to 10 inches higher
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there'll still be a lot of rain that funnels down there.
I mean, I think we can look at that as we get through construction on how that actually looks.
Okay.
If it spills past, I think what you're saying is if it
Yeah.
spills past that drain.
I could
You
see
know,
a lot of soggy turf right there. And
Yeah.
a rain
No,
garden
that's a
might
great
be.
point. I think as we kind of finish through that, let's see how it sheds, because it's basically flat, it's really flat.
Yeah,
I used to get the fields mixed up because they're named after Monona residents. And so there's Kaiser and Gunderson, and K becomes before G. So it's actually G becomes before K. So it's Gunderson is the poolside field. Kaiser is the field with the outfield in Greenway. And that field kind of slopes down at an angle. So the fill material from the excavation of the paths will be
Oh.
used to flatten that field out as well. So we're
Okay.
getting some improved playability of that field. And that's really, that area of the park is heavily used by our students at Winnequa School now for recess and active game areas. So the area kind of between the school parking lot and the shelter area kind of is like a valley as well, so that's gonna get filled in a little bit more, and kind of make that transition, because we're getting a lot of, with these heavy rain events, it does get really soft in there.
Yeah.
At certain parts, so we're really excited about kind of completing the north end of the park with the, Fireman's Park Shelter is now over 10 years old, believe it or not. We've transitioned, all of our youth sports to this area of the park, and it's really popular with our families to be able to bike and walk. So, including some paved paths for all of our populations, I think is going to be a positive for the community.
One more question if I could.
Mhm.
The Cottonwoods, at that spot, will the park,
We-
would the path be able to avoid cutting into
Yeah,
those
we
roots?
designed the whole path around those two large cottonwoods.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yep, they will. In fact, the path drifts closer than I would like into the field of play, of the outfield of that diamond, specifically to stay out of the drip line of those cottonwoods. So we'll be actually adjusting that field like a little bit, moving the foul lines
Okay.
90 degrees.
Excellent,
So
thank you.
It's gonna look a little wonky, but certainly there's the significance of those trees is protect them as much as we can.
Excellent, thank you.
Anyone else?
I had
Teresa?
So I'm looking at the document that you emailed to us, and it looks like the top of the paper would be east, and the bottom of the paper would be west, right?
Yeah.
So on the west side of that sketch, there is an existing path. Is that existing path sort of how the rest of the path will look? Is that
So the-
kind of what you're thinking?
The south side?
Well,
Yeah,
on
the
the,
pool parking, the
on the-
pool,
The Y,
where the Y is.
yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
okay.
Yes.
That's great. And then in the packet, there was, the documents that we all received, and I was just looking over those, and I thought it was really, I don't know, the name of the company, Parkitecture, kind of caught my eye, like, oh, that's a clever name for a company. So I went to their website, I don't know if anyone else did, front page, stunning sunscape photograph of Stonebridge Park on their website. It's just really lovely, so kind of
Yeah, they've done
interesting.
quite a bit of work for us, haven't they?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's all.
that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah.
Anybody else? Doug?
well, first of all, this is sort of like a dream come true that we're finally actually doing this. Or it's half a dream, because I'd like to do the other side of it too, but you take what you can get. So really, I think it'll be an amazing project for all sorts of reasons, connecting the school with the park. I guess, but I wanted to ask, would there be any advantage or disadvantage to us going ahead and approving this tonight?
If you want, not really, because there's, they can't start till Labor Day.
Yeah.
They would like to start earlier. I would like them to start earlier, but we have a full slate of
Mm.
activities in the park right now, so,
Okay. That's fine, then we can wait.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Brian?
Can you just walk us through the breakdown of the funding? It looks like there's some for
Correct.
the shelter.
So we had 425,000 budgeted for the trail expansion, and then the Schaefer Shelter remodel had 280, I think, and there was about 60,000 that I'd estimated would be site work around the Schaefer Shelter. So what I didn't touch upon was how that's gonna look. So we're raising that elevation of the path and then tying into the shelter. And so all the concrete work
One level.
around the shelter and where the dugouts are gonna be, that's all gonna be new as well, so new dugouts. And then, so a portion of that is allocated to the Schaefer Shelter remodel with still bidding out, new siding, new roof, new gutters, demoing the bathrooms and making those ADA accessible, along with the serving counter for concessions. So the goal is to kind of be able to put multi levels of activities at 2 timeframes where we can also have concessions available at that facility on site. So, and that does leave a little bit of room in the trail expansion budget for the construction administration from our consultant, and then also any contingency that might be needed.
Anything else? I think it's a great project. I really like it. All right, well then, thank you, Jake, and it'll be back in 2 weeks.
All right.
Moving back up the agenda, item G2A, consideration of resolution 24-7-2420, acceptance of the ad hoc work group on diversity and equity issues report to council, Monona DEIB implementation plan recommendations, put forth by the Ad hoc Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Implementation Committee. As you know, it was just about 2 years ago that we accepted the plan from the original DEI committee, and that plan had a lot of different recommendations, and including, I think, a recommendation to come up with a plan for implementing at least some of the plan. And so I appointed a sort of a hybrid. We reestablished that committee with a little bit more of a charge, and some of the members who were on it continued, and then appointed other new members, because there were several people who did not want to continue after the initial committee, and they've been working on coming up with a plan to implement some of the suggestions. So, Neil, did you want to address it a little bit? This is their recommendations.
Yeah, certainly, yes. So the implementation plan recommendations document that's in your packet is actually from the committee. That is their direct recommendations on there. So that document was not altered at all from committee. So just to be clear, that is the committee's recommendations on that. So the additional staff memo that is provided additional from me is after sending this document, sharing it with department heads and asking for comments and just to review it and kind of comment on implementation options and alternatives as we move ahead on this. So just to be clear, we want to make sure, and speaking with Alder Rademacher, I want to make sure that, some of the things that were stated, I want to make sure that it was not the job of staff to edit or correct those recommendations. So I want to keep them as the committee represented them. So simply provided additional comments as a separate memo, just as, again, for additional food for consideration as reviewing the recommendations. I don't know if there's anything else, if there's specific questions about anything that is presented in either the staff memo or the report itself. Be happy to address anything that may be up.
I just wanted to, on page, in the staff report on page 39, appears to be some words missing, which is to say it starts 2 key items.
Oh, the third paragraph
Nope.
down.
You see that? And it says,
Oh, yeah,
you see where I'm looking? In the staff,
about the TID projects.
it says 2 key items to be aware of, bullet point.
Okay.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
On page 39, and it says, it's important to note that current TIDs are projected to close in the
Oh,
following
okay.
years.
Yep, that's
But then
missing.
there aren't any following
Yep.
years.
Yeah, that detail was I didn't, I forgot to finish that up with Director Hauger, but the point was going to be, that several of those districts are not closing for the next 4 to 10 years, essentially.
Right,
So implementing that next year isn't really feasible, because we're not going to have that additional year of funding from those districts until that time.
In terms
So,
of Renew Monona.
yeah, I will get that amended to include the actual closure years of those, projected closure years of those TIF districts. So it just was not an immediate option because of simply those districts have multiple years remaining on them, so. Thank you for catching that.
and then I also have a question about, the ad hoc policy, housing policy committee,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're envisioning that forming, because, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm against the ad hoc housing or policy committee, but unless that is a committee of experts, I could see them
Mm.
either not being sufficiently informed to know what's possible and not possible, as it relates to planning and development. Or potentially getting at cross purposes when something might not be possible, and so I'm wondering, not to mention that we already have lots of eyes,
Mm-hmm.
on our housing development, so I'm just wondering, although your intention would be that it's ad hoc only for the writing of the plan, so it would be a short-term thing where there would be expertise on that committee?
My understanding would be that the purpose of such a body would only be to function as sort of a reminding tool, like, how's it going? And check back in, and just not so much to dictate policy, but just make sure that the goals are continued to move forward. Yeah.
Mayor, if I could on that, just one quick one.
Neil?
I do think, Alder Moore, that there's an opportunity through the comprehensive plan update to use either focus groups of targeted experts and
Sure.
developers and other
Sure.
folks to really achieve that level of feedback and some, as a mechanism. So certainly would anticipate that being, certainly some way, shape, or form, a part of the comprehensive plan update process for that element, for sure.
Yeah.
There could be other ways of engaging, certainly market experts or builders or developers or bankers or whoever we would
Yeah.
deem appropriate to get some feedback from as part of that process as well.
Okay, well, and it did, I mean, it does say that they would, how did they put it? Zoning changes to, the ad hoc, would create an ad hoc committee to focus attention on the city's housing diversity and affordability and missing middle challenges and inform the writing of the housing element of the comprehensive plan. So, again, I'm not at all saying that such a committee shouldn't exist or hold our feet to the fire, but given that we're already being driven not only by our own work, and by expertise on various committees, but we're also have all the work that was done by Dane County,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just, think that there's the potential for, you know, but as you said, if it's focus groups or in other ways, I'm fine with it. The other thing is that, I know that we often, and, you know, at the end of our agendas, we're often asking for sustainability or DEIB initiatives. And some of the things in this report just remind me, that we really, really need the department heads to be particularly reporting on DEIB things. Because we obviously don't know them if they don't report them to us. And just even, you know, even some of the recommendations here, for instance, around the use of public spaces. Well, like, I'm very confident that, you know, Jake Anderson, as Director of Parks and Rec, has repeatedly said that a huge percentage of our shelter rentals are BIPOC community and organizations within that community. And, you know, we just had the Pride Story Time from the library, and frequently the library does events. And frequently WVMO is doing things, you know. And I dare say we just had a gigantic event with the Harry White Horse Festival as well. So, and while I don't frequent the pool a lot, because I don't have young kids and I'm not a lap swimmer, every time I look into that pool, there's an extremely diverse population that's in there and utilizing our pool. So I just, again, wanted to take the opportunity in the context of this report to encourage the staff to start collecting data and reporting some of these things out so that the community knows that in fact a lot of that is, a lot of this happen.
Anyone else? Rick?
The one thing I wondered, when it comes to Renew Monona, is we grant money for solar, but I don't know if we have a comparable program for affordable housing yet, even though we have one TID program that has a $3 million up to, I guess, appropriation possible. So is that incumbent? Is that the next step or one of the next step if we're gonna do something with affordable housing?
Yeah, I think the purpose of the Renew Monona is started at least, and us being able to use that fund isn't most of it required to be used for affordable housing?
Certainly for the TID extension funding, absolutely. I think in terms of immediate, and I think I tried to address this a little bit in my staff memo, the ability to use tax increment financing in a traditional sense. So essentially assisting with costs or other projects that otherwise would not happen if it was not for city investment. So we can do that right now. We have a project that can come through CDA and say it's going to guarantee a certain value, and it's going to include 20% units or 80% of the units will be at, targeted towards these income levels. We have the ability to do that right now. So we don't have to wait for the money to come in. That's actually something we can negotiate as part of a TIF development agreement right now. So I think that's our immediate opportunity. The challenge with that is obviously an affordable housing project does not generally value as high as a market rate project. So we can tell people you can have a 100-unit building constructed exactly the same way, built right next to each other, and the market rate one can be at $15 million and the affordable housing one can be $5 million. And it's the exact same construction in almost the exact same location. But because it's based on the rental amounts, the value generated is considerably less, which obviously that's what drives TIF increment. So if it's a lesser value, there's less money available to make available to our project. So as long as you can balance that and find a way to contribute still positive increment towards an affordable housing project, we could still write that, essentially that development agreement right now if CDA and council chooses to do so.
And that's what happened with the North Point project.
Exactly.
But in terms of Renew Monona,
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, Rick, you're, to classify Renew Monona as financing solar would be completely a mischaracterization of what Renew Monona was built as.
Okay.
And it's been rewritten at least twice since I've been on the council, and they're looking at another rewrite now.
Correct.
And you can speak to that, as well as I can. I didn't mean to butt in, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that it wasn't just about, it actually does go to not affordable housing in a bigger sense as in underwriting a development, but maintaining a house when people can't afford to do that.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
can currently, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It essentially, Renew Monona is essentially targeted towards offering a more affordable financing tool for individuals to essentially to make improvements to their home, their private home. So the kind of the I don't say the rub, but the thing that kind of comes into play is you want to target these funds towards folks who are more likely to be able to justify and need the funding. So to either whether it's a lower income or a more targeted project. Again, but part of that is part of a financial review is you want that person you're loaning the money to be financially viable and responsible. You don't want to lose those funds. So but yet you're targeting individuals who may already be closer to that situation than a normal, that's why they would not constitute traditional financing. So one of the things we are looking at right now, I think as staff, is figuring out kind of a way to justify having someone come in with an application saying, this is what I can get for traditional financing, this is my gap, what can I do to qualify, and can I qualify in this? So they've essentially established their private financing first. This is my overall project, the gap is $100,000 between what I need, and so that's the ask, and then would be based to justify that would come through review. So kind of trying to figure out, kind of reversing that, because I think what we're finding out is the way the program is right now, folks can be like, oh, well, I need that $100,000, but I can get $100,000 at this lower interest rate than I can at my bank, so I'm going to go ask for it there. So it's kind of trying to reverse the order of how so they still need to have that private financing, be able to demonstrate that gap, and then come in. So that's just an example of one of the things we're trying to look at to kind of help target the money towards folks so it's more need-based rather than just financial viability. Which again, from building the fund and getting the interest rate, that's great. It helps actually grow the fund, but it does not exactly target, essentially the lower income folks, which I think was kind of really the intent of the original program, I think.
Doug, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the intent of the program has been to maintain the housing stock,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that we have a lot of mid-century homes that need a lot of, may need a lot of work. The current cutoff, I think, is 120 or 125% of the median home value, which, as we all know, is probably now around 400,000 is the median home value. So this is like 125,000 of that, 125% of that. And that's actually one thing we have talked about, and because we are going to be making changes to the program, is looking at lowering that. But it's not really, I mean, that's really the only way that it's focused on people, or at least living in housing that's relatively in the middle or less. So we do have, part of the program is to, for mortgage assistance, but we haven't had anybody apply for that. So I think that's something we'll have to look at, is there an obvious reason for that we can fix? Or, because now with the interest rates, you would think that there's enough of a gap, but the Renew Monona loans are at 2%. And so, right now, that would be a pretty favorable rate. A few years ago, the difference was pretty minimal. So those are some things we're going to look at. The other thing I would just note is that one of the TIF districts that we're talking about creating for Pirate Island is a new kind or different kind of TIF district than we've done before. It's a conservation TID that would allow us to assist. So it wouldn't be going in and saying, we're going to tear down these apartments and put in new apartments. It would be going in and attempting to provide assistance to the owners to upgrade the quality of that existing housing, and that's pretty much all affordable housing down there, I think, no matter how you measure it. So
We do have quite a bit of affordable existing older housing that needs some work. I think something else to keep in mind is this Renew Monona Fund is not millions of dollars. It's, so in terms of like building a whole new development with it, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
I'm not even sure how much is in it right now. It's probably less than $1 million, isn't it? I mean, a couple $100,000. It's not. So in order to do really big projects right now, there's not the funds that maybe eventually there will be when we close out some of these, more valuable TIDs, but that's gonna be a long time.
Just a quick
Neil?
comment. And I think the other thing we'd like to do with that is obviously leverage it against other financing programs. So kind of, get more bang for our buck, literally and
Like the one
figuratively.
available through One City Schools. we
Exactly,
talked
so like the down
about
payment
that.
assistance programs, the other financing, I think this is a way to kind of leverage other financing mechanisms to actually help put a larger kind of a capital stack together for individual homeowners who are looking to finance their improvements.
Teresa?
I just wanted to say a few words about this report. It was really an honor to be on this committee, and I'm really proud of all the community members that put a lot of time and effort into coming up with this document. The phrase "starting point" or "starting place" comes to mind, in that we all know that this is not the end of the road, and it's just a place to start. And this group was charged with looking at the original report, and sort of as a group, what we did was we looked at all of the recommendations in the original report that came out a couple years ago, as the mayor said earlier, and then agree as a group on which of all of the recommendations might stand out, might be already sort of started, might be easy to, push a little on and get it across the finish line. Maybe low-hanging fruit might be a phrase that people might think of. And then once we all sort of came to that, winnowing down of the original report, at that point, just a little reminder of procedure, Nehemiah had the group of us break down into 3 separate groups, and we each focused on a particular area. There was housing and business recommendations, which would be John Anderson, who is our committee chair, Jason Chung, and myself. The next group focused on communication, which was Lynn Chase, Christy Goforth, and Shalene Sarate. And then finally, we had what might just be referred as community capacity building, which included Jesse Claringbold, Marianne Reed, Kai Richards, and Shelby Steele. And each of those small groups, Nehemiah gave them quite a bit of autonomy, which can be a wonderful thing. They really dug in and did a lot of research. Some of them met with city leaders to sort of understand the history of where we've been and what challenges there are. I know my group met with a number of folks in the housing areas, and then the document came together, right? And in some ways, we sort of had 3 separate documents, so then we kind of had to merge them together, but that's okay too. And my role was not the chair of the committee. I was very much a participant in this housing section, and it was sort of an unusual place to be. I've not been on a committee that I didn't chair yet. Except before I was an alder. But the role, my role, sometimes I was very gently reminded that it was not my job to how do I say this? This document represents what the committee wants. It's what citizens wrote. They put their heart into it, and there may have been times where I may have raised concern or questioned whether something was truly feasible, but at the end of the day, it's their work, and that's important. And it's important that we let our citizens tell our community what they want, what's important to them. I also think about sometimes lately in the news, I don't know what's going on. There's just this backlash against DEI initiatives, and it's really sad. It's kind of crazy, happening all over the country, which was a topic of conversation in many of our meetings. People here who know me know that I have a lot of interest in environmental sustainability, but DEIB is kind of like social sustainability. If you have a community, it's like having a family. And anybody who is part of a family, whether you're a parent with kids or whether you've got siblings, every member of the family has different needs. We treat them all, we give them all equal access we give them all equal opportunity, but everybody needs a little something different, right? And that's all it really is. Just in its simplest of forms. So I'm glad to have this finally here in front of the council. There is I believe, a different cover maybe that Neil has put together that might
I think he emailed that.
email
this
that out,
afternoon. Yeah.
so we can all see the group members perhaps in the future.
Looks
If
like this.
yeah, if there are questions about a particular section, perhaps those members are very much interested in taking questions and explaining anything that may not be clear. They still want to be available as a resource. So thank you.
Anyone else? Brian?
I definitely thank the committee for putting this together. This is no easy task. As we talked about getting into this, if someone could do this perfectly, they could bottle it up and be millionaires because everybody would buy it. It's a very challenging task ahead of them, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. The staff report that goes along with it, I think, is actually a secondary step, and I'm trying my best to actually hold that separate in my mind, because there's almost this first step of being able to accept a report from that group as kind of what that report is and what it represents, and clearly there are lots of things that are being recommended or encouraged to look into it. Like, there's lots of different language when you look at that of, hey, you should do that or you should do this. There's a whole host of things from the city side that, like, you say, go do this one thing, there's like 10 other pieces part of it. And I think that's, Teresa, what you were kind of pointing out to, of like this trickiness of being on a committee, wanting to say, hey, but hang on, we're doing these 3 things and there's these 2 other things. And being able to just sit with the document for a period of time and then be able to come back with, all right, well, where are we in all of these different items? And I see it as an acceptance of a report rather than an adoption of a report.
Exactly.
Which I think is distinctly different than
Yes.
some other types of reports that come forward. So I appreciate the time and effort that's been put into it, and where we go from here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nancy?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that, first of all, I also extend my gratitude to the committee, but I also wanted to clarify in pointing out some things that the city has done and the staff reporting what's going on. I wasn't in any way intending to say that those things were any less valid.
Yeah.
What I was trying to, 2 things. One is, I do think it would be helpful for our community to know some of that data and the diversity of programming and the diversity of public use of our spaces, et cetera. I can say from a plan commission standpoint, just about every small business owner that's come in front of the plan commission in the years that I've been chair has been from the BIPOC community. And just as important, my world is all about measurable outcomes. And this report speaks a lot to measuring progress. And unless we have baseline data, you can't measure it. So that's my primary reason for pointing out that we're doing things and we need reports from staff, is we need some baseline data in order to know that we're making progress.
To
And
that,
I was just going to say, I think Neil is in the process of meeting with department heads, and part of that process is, because I've been pushing to get more staff reports included in the packets, kind of ever since I've been mayor, and I know Bob Miller did too. And I know they're talking somewhat about what should be included in those staff reports, and this is the kind of thing,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, Teresa?
yeah, and sort of along the lines of what Aldermore was talking about, just, how do we measure progress, and how do we just keep abreast of what progress is happening. And so in the last section of the resolution, it was really important. I'm so happy that Neil included, the line about the city administrator being charged with providing annual updates, which slightly different than what you're saying, but in the same spirit, I think.
Anyone else? And this will come back next time.
Yep.
Too, so. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna move on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. And you notice we've made a little bit of a change. We'd like you to include reports on sustainability and DEIB efforts in these committee reports as well. So I will start with Alder Holmquist.
Well, I won't steal the CDA stuff, so Doug, this is your reminder to add that item in. Our Public Works meeting scheduled for this week has been canceled. It was scheduled for the 5th, so this month there is no Public Works meeting, and then there is a zoning Board of Appeals meeting on the 18th. And no other items to report at this time.
Okay, Alder Moore?
Yeah, at the Plan Commission, at the last Planning Committee meeting, Plan Commission meeting, enthused to report that we approved the GDP and PIP for the development at 112-208 Owen, put forth by Bert Slindy and Slindy Realty. It's been something that's, so now it's, I should say that we recommended the GDP and the PIP for this development, and that's the bowling alley site for those of you that don't have the addresses memorized in Monona. As a lot of people know in this community, this has been a development that's been discussed and rediscussed and reworked as the economy has changed over the last 2 or 3 years. So now it's on to not only the CDA, but also to the City Council. We also approved Affiliated Dentists, which is a current business in Monona, at River Place, moving to the new BESA. They're going to be the anchor tenant, commercial tenant, in the BESA, which is the development that's being built. As we've talked about before, there's commercial space there in addition to like 30 live-work spaces, and the live-work spaces as well as the commercial space is a purchase rather than a lease, so those are condos. Affiliated Dentists will be moving to the new BESA, and the development of BESA reminded us at the Plan Commission that it'll be back 30 times because they're live workspaces, and every time a new small business comes in, we have to know who they are. So
I didn't think about that.
yeah. Finally, we approved Dave Jamaican, which many of us know, moving back to Monona.
Nice.
They're going to be moving in on Broadway. So we welcome them back. Excuse me. And finally, definitely last but not least, as everyone knows, we successfully completed excuse me, the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival on the and I just want to extend my thanks to the city, again, the city staff. WVMO, the police department, fire department, Parks and Rec, city administration, Neil and Mary, just terrific. And I want to extend my thanks to the volunteers and the volunteer manager as well. It went really well for a first-year event. And as I like to say, Monona proud. I don't know what happened to my voice.
But I think that was
I hope you
intentional
heard all
for
that.
dramatic effect. I don't know, you got all choked up there.
No, it wasn't choking up. Although I could easily do that because it's pretty spectacular. If people haven't seen the sculptures yet, I'd strongly encourage people to go up to San Damiano. All 11 sculptures are up there and will remain up there till after the 4th of July. We are in the process of finding them at least temporary homes, public facing temporary homes on the east side of Madison. And looks like we've accomplished that actually. So they're really quite stunning. And the whole event really was terrific and could not have been done without the support of everyone on the staff and in the community.
And Alder, the temporary home
Yeah.
is significant as opposed to the permanent home. Can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit the temporary home just for the
Sure.
process that
So these were all logs that were cut down relatively recently and not dried before they came to the site. So they need to dry out before they're permanently sealed. So for the next year, they need to be cured, which is the drying process. It takes a year because you can't throw it in the kiln, it'll crack.
Yeah.
You need to have it dry naturally and slowly. So the curing process is essentially for a year, and they have to be outside in the shade and in a space that's not too damp when they're curing, and they're treated regularly with oil while they're curing. And then once they're done curing, they'll be moved to permanent sites, again, around Madison. They're not being shipped over to Europe with their artists, in and around Madison and Monona. And the permanent installation is just a little more involved, but that's the curing process. Takes about a year.
Thank you.
Sure.
Alder Wood.
CDA is having a special meeting tomorrow night for the public hearing on the creation of the 7 TIF districts, 11 through 17. And then after the public hearing, we'll be discussing and likely approving the creation of those districts. That's at 6:30 at City Hall Conference Room.
Thank you. Alder Rademacher.
All right. Let's see here. So just beyond the DEIB report, I just don't know if I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder here. Somebody may have been thinking of saying this, but the radio show Conectado, so I was, you may know that they've just celebrated 1 year, 1 anniversary of being on the air, which is pretty wonderful for our community. It's a Spanish-English bilingual radio show. We just heard tonight from Park Director Anderson about ADA accessible changes that are being made to Winnequa Park, the path itself, the restrooms, fantastic. And I think earlier tonight someone may have mentioned the really wonderful event that happened down at Grand Crossing this past weekend, the Pride Story Hour, which was really very heavily attended and strong community support. It was just wonderful. From sustainability, the committee held its biannual, every other year, we have an electronics recycling event, and it was held this past Saturday over at the Monona Grove District offices, the parking lot there by MG21. It was from 8 until noon, and at 7:30 there was a line of cars around the parking lot waiting in a queue to drop off their items. It was wildly popular. and then just a nice slow and steady stream of cars until close. You didn't even have to get out of your car. You just circled around, and volunteers took out your electronic items. The final results, the final weight and the pounds collected is not known yet, but we should have that soon. And also interesting, one of the cars that went through the parking lot was from the Monona Fire Department. One of the EMTs drove over, and they were asking about some of their electronic gadgets that they thought they might be able to recycle, which, how wonderful is that, right? Just a great opportunity for us to recycle our own city materials. Landmarks Commission, we've got a new member with a really interesting background in Native American cultures, First Nations. We're starting to talk about how we can really hold up those types of landmarks that are here in our city, not just the recently built structures. And we're also talking a little bit about sustainability. How do we bring environmental sustainability into the work that we do on landmarks? And tourism. I would say that just a reminder, the next due date for tourism future application deadlines, we've got, today. And then October 7th would be our last due date of 2024. A lot of great events that happen in our city, wonderful events that bring out families and music, and Tourism Commission is here to support those events. Just thinking ahead to the big weekend ahead, it also has a lot to do with, the Monona Community Festival last year, and I'm hoping this year as well, was one of the most diverse that I recall. They had just a fantastic lineup of music, Latin music. They had the drag bingo, and it was just great. So I'm hoping to see more of that this weekend.
Alder Bernstein.
Hello. I wasn't able to attend the Public Works Commission meeting, but I did see it online, and not Public Works, Public Safety, excuse me. And they approved the capital budget requests from both chiefs. So that'll be winging its way to City Council. I think there was some comment the police chief had about the DEIB report, and I'll let him speak to that if he's coming to the microphone later. I sat in on the Senior Citizens Committee meeting and met the crew there, and they're a lively bunch. And we had some pretty good discussions about the referendum. There were some sharp comments, and I've relayed that to Neil. And so, just so you know, there are some people who do not feel that they can afford some additional taxation. But following the Senior Citizens Committee meeting, the next day was the Friends of the Senior Citizens Center, and that also is a very lively group. They warmly recruited me to be part of it, and I think there's a tradition of City Council people also sitting in on that committee, so I'm thinking about joining them as well. The library board did get some comments from people about its drag queen story time, and there was some who felt it was sexualized grooming. We haven't had that kind of comment before, but there was an emergency meeting to deal with the social media policy that the library has. I was not in town, so I couldn't attend that meeting, but I do think they made some adjustments to their policy to deal with that. And I'll find out more when I get a chance to talk to Ryan. But it really made me think a lot about what people are saying about these events, and I have to say that I just don't agree. I don't feel that it's either sexualized or grooming. But I really have to articulate my feelings a little further to be able to converse about that and really argue the point. I haven't really felt the need to take it head-on intellectually, but I am working on that for myself. And hopefully it'll help me be able to defend what the library is doing from future attacks. That's my report.
Rick, I'm just curious, do you know whether the comments, you mentioned the word groomer, that specific word was used as the name of an organization that expressed some concern? Is that what you're referring to, or you?
Yeah, there were some email comments, I think.
From that,
Yeah.
from the person claiming to be a part of that organization?
Right, and I think that was probably just one small example of a lot more that the library was getting this time around. I don't think they had that issue last year.
I think these were all precipitated pretty much from this group though, right?
Yeah. Which
Neil can address that a little bit.
Okay.
Which the Southern Poverty Law Center has identified as a known hate
Yeah,
group.
they're not, I don't, where are they based? They're not even from Wisconsin.
I'm not
are they?
even sure exactly their location, but
Right.
yeah, with a high degree of confidence that we
Yeah.
feel none of these folks were
Local.
from
No.
Monona. At least at least from the comments I had seen and discussed with Ryan, none of them were
Yeah.
local.
Yeah, you worked with Ryan on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
So-
anyone happened to visit this event and listen to the stories that were being shared or the messages that were being shared, you may have heard something like, be yourself. Be bold, be brave, be confident. You can do anything you put your mind to. It was the same things that we all would tell any of our own children. Very positive messages.
Well, it looks like Alder DePula has left us, I think.
I don't believe he's on it.
So we will move on to staff. Brian, we were just talking about the Pride. If you have
Congratulations.
anything to report?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was closing. No, just I wanted to thank the city, my fellow departments for helping us out for the wonderful Pride Storytime on Saturday. It was great to see the families come and enjoy it, but it was also wonderful to see just the support from the city, not only just the residents, but also you all getting assistance from the police and the wonderful assistance from Parks and Rec. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of people. I apologize, but it was a great event, and I really appreciate, and my staff very much appreciates, the challenges, as we went through leading up to the event, and just seeing the community just support not only us, but also the message around the event. So just wanted to say thank you all, and also thank you to my fellow departments. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Chief?
Good evening. Well, to Alder Bernstein's point, thanks for watching the meeting, sir. We did miss you. I talked a good portion of the meeting about DEIB efforts, and sort of the theme of the day for me was sort of missed opportunity, in that I think it was a missed opportunity that, unfortunately, this is just my humble opinion, I believe that very, very hardworking ad hoc committee probably could have used some, probably benefited, I hope, some additional insight from what the police department is doing or has done or plans to do. And that's what I discussed at the meeting, and it gave several examples of things that, oh, this was a missed opportunity, oh, we're doing this, oh, we're doing that, or we could, we plan on doing such and such. But, some of the examples of what we're doing is what you brought up here today, in supporting various initiatives and supporting, story time, and supporting Whitehorse, and supporting all of these events so that we can have safe events, and encouraging folks to participate in these community events. So just as Ryan and the library staff and other department staff are good teammates to us, the police department, we in turn try to be good teammates for all of them and all of you all. So that was the theme. But I also spoke on somewhat of a flattering point. Now, we have work to do, and I'm all about continuous improvement. The day I say mission accomplished is the day you need to fire me. Well, don't really fire me. Although you don't have the authority.
We
It's
can't
a
do it,
police and
that's
fire
right.
committee.
You're okay, you're safe, that's right, you're safe.
But, so I understand and recognize there's more work to do. But, you know, I want to also speak on the work that the balance of this department, so the 25 other individuals do every day, particularly in terms of community engagement. So much so that I found it to be very flattering that there's a University of Virginia professor, his name is Dr. Kyle Dobson. At the meeting, for the life of me, I could not recall his name. You remember that from watching. I've got it now, Dr. Kyle Dobson, a man of color himself. He's a professor of leadership and public policy at the University of Virginia. Heard about some of the work that we're doing here in Little Old Monona and reached out and actually had a Zoom session, he and one of his staffers. They're applying for a grant to look at altruism and to look at why cops go above and beyond and to try to see if there's some research and science behind that. And they're looking for some grant money to dig into that a little bit more. I said, I'm not the statistician, I'm not the scientist, but I know from day one when I started the quote-unquote requirement of doing community engagement, 1 per quarter that each officer and dispatcher has to do, I can feel and see now that they've gone above and beyond that. And I've not mandated more than just the 1 per quarter. They've done a lot more than that. And I'm not at events counting persons of color, but I can tell you is that the overwhelmingly vast majority of our events do involve persons of color, right? And we are engaging communities of color. We're having positive impacts, I think, in our community. And again, the theme is missed opportunity. There's work to do. There's work to be done. We need to continue to build on that. But, you know, I was sort of reading the report and saying, oh, geez, you know, I know that was a lot of hard work for years and years and years. And, oh, geez, the position on the policy. And, oh, I wish I could have gone in there and shared a little bit more as I had with some of you about the PERF report and, you know, given you the data and said, you read this or you look at that and sort of make an informed decision. Just a missed opportunity that I hope to continue to engage this group or others that may come about in the future. So that is my homework to do, and I'll continue to do the work expected of me. But you hear me brag about them often. You yourselves brag about them often. I think we're doing the work that this community expects us to do, and we're happy to pivot and shift in a positive direction anytime we need to do so. But thank you to the committee, thank you to all of you, and thank you to all of the departments, all the city staff who work hard every day to making sure we're making this a safe, equitable Monona.
Thank you. We appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I make a comment? Thank you for bringing that up, Chief. You may notice that the section about police pursuit is not officially within the document, but rather as an addendum to the document. It was something that one of the committee members wanted to add, but we were so far along in the process that sort of the negotiated happy medium was, okay, how about we put it at the end? And again, to a comment that I spoke of earlier, it was not my, I let it be known that I had already voted on the policy that we currently have, and I let it be known how I voted. But nonetheless, the committee chose to include it, and there it is. So, yeah, but I agree, that's a very good point. Missed opportunity is a wonderful phrase. Some of the groups were able to meet with city leaders and others were not able to, so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I understand that this is a
yeah.
volunteer group, and they all
Yeah.
have their own busy lives and whatnot, but this doesn't end today. So at any time anybody wants to come and talk to me, you know, I'm available. I'll chat with you. We'll carve out some time that between your schedule, and I'm not just talking about you wonderful people here, I'm talking about members of the community. And I have had several people come in and wanting to talk about the policy or other things that we can be doing. But I will say I spend, as you are not surprised, a lot of time talking, but listening as well at the committee level where it is open to the public. I encourage members to show up, but sometimes folks aren't comfortable talking in that forum and for a variety of valid reasons. And so I open up either my office or I go to them. I have a lot of, as many of you know, outside offices, cafes and such. Anyone that serves hot chocolate, I'm there. And engage in conversation in places that are more comfortable for folks. And I appreciate and I understand that. Part of what I was getting at too is that I hadn't had that, right? I hadn't had
what?
I didn't have, so I remember, I can recall talking on invitation with the committee once. I can recall asking
With a subgroup of the committee?
It was Jason. So it was when Jason was sort of
Okay,
running
so
the
like,
show.
okay,
This
sure.
was the
Oh, that was
first
the very,
The
very
first-
first.
the very
Got
first
it,
group.
Got it.
But with members of the
Yeah,
group,
yeah.
I've met with to talk about various topics. I regularly do interviews with Manon Arc.
Yep.
I part of Law Enforcement Leaders of Color collaboration with the NAACP and United Way. I am not shy about engaging in some very challenging conversation and discussions as it relates to how we can provide better service to communities of color. I would like to think that I talk the talk and walk the talk, but when I take this uniform when I take it off, I experience the same things that a lot of these topics are trying to address. So I speak on experience too when
Yeah.
I go to Kohl's or when
Yeah.
I drive my car on the way home, my personal car on the way home, and what that makes me feel like. So I get it, but I don't want to diminish the work. As all of you have indicated, it's
Exactly.
great work. But again, I think just some missed opportunities that I just couldn't walk away from that committee meeting or this meeting without just sort of bringing that up.
I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Officer Hoffman, did you have any just here to observe? Okay. City Clerk? No problem. Administrator Sexualty?
Absolutely. Actually, Aleen's and staff has been very busy getting ready for the next round of elections coming up in August. So she's being polite by not saying that, not adding that in there. I just wanted to make a note of that. They've been very busy getting ready for that. In fact, just blocked off the drop box today so absentee ballots don't go incorrectly go in
I
there.
thought we could now use the Dropbox.
Locked it up.
So they actually
Oh, you brought up the Dropbox.
drop the
so
drop
you're gonna-
box itself, yeah, so we can't
Okay.
do those things. So, yeah, so they're obviously getting ready for those things there. Just before I forget, a couple of items for the, I guess an additional DEI item. Attended the presentation of the G Alpha Group class at the Urban League. This is an entrepreneurship class that they operate and do there. Pretty fascinating group of individuals kind of bringing forth new businesses. One of them was a faith-based business for like an adult daycare that's looking to be based here in Monona. So it was a good outreach to meet with them, but just some fascinating individuals and it really just a chance to tour the Black Business Hub, the new that's still being completed by the Urban League. Just an amazing building. Dr. Anthony says, come on over, invites all the elected officials sometime to come check it out. It's really, it's a great building. Just from a sustainability standpoint, participated in it's called a Recce group that's being put on by the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Council. It's called a Resilient Efficient Codes Implementation. So pretty technical group in terms of looking at different ways to incorporate different code improvements and alterations into city projects. So it was a variety, probably about, I think there's like 23 or 26 different municipalities who were on the call. So I sat in on that. It was about an hour and a half, different calls. So everything from technical resources to just networking to sample ordinances to a whole bunch of just kind of establishing kind of a more of a resource networking group among different municipalities. So glad to be sitting on that. I may be slowly transitioning that off to Brad or Thor at some point because as they start getting down in the weeds on the codes, probably need to do that. I know Public Works they got mill and overlay projects are underway in the city. I think are on schedule and moving forward on time. Just one reminder, most importantly, the community survey is due July 3rd. Folks out there still haven't got their survey in, please make sure and do that. Looking forward to getting that. We have good response so far. I think at least last check, we had 15% response rate, which we wanted a minimum of 10. So anything that comes in beyond that just increases the accuracy of the survey. So encouraging folks to still continue that. We did launch a kind of a more of a format update to the city website this last Friday. Folks haven't checked it out. It does look a little different. Functions largely the same. Mostly some cosmetic type of improvements, but again, kind of a new refresh on that. I know Chief McMullen is on, but I wanted to pass along compliments from the festival staff, all the festival prep going on down here at Winnequa Park, for all the help that the volunteer firefighters put up in helping get the tent and the fencing and so forth up. They were a big help. I think this was last Friday night. Very expressed some very good appreciation from them, from the organizers on the help from that. Wanted to just remind folks, remember the retention payments that were approved in the budget this past year. I believe that second payment comes out either this Friday or next Friday. So the second half of that will be coming out to all employees. So just a reminder and thank you to the council for that effort. And just an interesting note that did come from Director Anderson, obviously has already gone, but he's up to 130 employees if you count all of his part-timers and things right now. So now he's kind of one of the biggest, if you count all of his LTE and part-time staff. He's one of the bigger departments in the city right now because of all the Parks and Rec.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because of all the seasonals and other
Sure.
work that they're doing on right now. So I think that's my update for today.
Okay, I don't have a lot of news other than to thank again everyone involved with the Wood Sculpture Festival. It was amazing. I think all of you got a chance to get up there, and Alders Rademacher and more. I know the two of you put in a lot of time, much appreciated for years, Alder Moore in particular. And it was,
Yes.
I've heard nothing but great comments about it, and a lot of them. So it was really a great thing to bring to Monona. It was exciting. Moving on, we have one appointment, Jamie McDevitt Gallus to the Sustainability Committee, effective immediately through April 30th, 2025. I think she's completing Sarah Smith's term and then could be up for a full term. So actually, she was at the Pride Story Hour the other day, but you had left by the
Yeah, I
time
missed, yeah.
I've introduced you. Anyway, I met with her last week. She's got a great background for the committee, and I think this leaves us with still one opening on
One
landmarks,
opening, yeah.
and otherwise everything
Yeah.
will be full, so. Is there a motion to approve the appointments?
I would like to move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned, and enjoy the 4th of July.